Welcome, everyone. My name is Peter. I'm the president of Anderson Ranch Arts Center. On behalf of the staff, the trustees, and the National Council who really make the ranch the place that it is, I welcome you today. I'm thrilled to have you here. All right, I'll get a clap for that. That wasn't even a plant. It's just a spontaneous celebration. It has been an amazing summer. I've been thrilled to have you here. This is our last Thursday lecture of the summer, so thank you for coming. This series is underwritten. The title underwriters are Mel and Adam Lewis, and they do that in honor of Toby, who I know is friends with so many of you here in the room as she was with so much of the staff. She was a board member for many years, and she put together the Progressive Collection as their curator, and I really want to honor her legacy in this program. Some individuals really make this program work and successful. I appreciate their underwriting. Sarah Arison and Tom Willem, Jill and Jay Bernstein, Rona and Jeff Citron, Ann Cook and Charlie Moss, Eleanor and Domenico De Soleil, Shara and Joe Felson, Barbara and John Lee, Liza and John Mauk, Katie and Amnon Rodan, Lee and Reggie Smith, Ellen Sussman, Anna and Matt Friedman just joined the group. It gets longer every week, so I keep kind of adding on, but thank all of you for making this possible, and we're so excited to have you here in the room. One of those hosts, Liza, welcomed our speakers last night with a really great dinner, so special thanks to you. I know it was a really special group. It was all women besides Benjamin, so I got excluded, but next time I'm going to sit at the next table because I sounded like they had such a really great time. We have some corporate underwriters. Kapira's here. Christie Auction House helps support the whole series. Thank you. We'll get a cheer for that one. Pure Insurance, United Airlines, and Cultured Magazine. Cultured Magazine's founder and editor-in-chief, Sarah Harrelson, helped put together the whole summer. It's really been a great summer, a great idea. I think I have to thank Liza once again because I think that was her idea that she brought to us last year, and it's been a huge success, so thank you. I will quickly introduce Benjamin and we can get to our program. Independent curator, art advisor, leading authority in 20th and 21st century art. His insights, the market insights and curatorial insights have been featured in Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Bloomberg, the list kind of goes on and on. But I'll also say we've so enjoyed having him here. Fun, great energy. I think it's going to be a really great talk today. And Benjamin, I will let you introduce Hilary. Thank you. So much,
I'm so thrilled to be here and doubly thrilled to be joined by my friend, fantastic painter, Hilary Pecis. It is so great to be able to have engaged in a dialogue over the past few months, thinking about what this presentation could be, and then especially having some great hikes and meals and getting to spend some time with all of you here in Aspen. Hilary's a painter of our world, of kind of the small moments that she notices and captures with friends, and that kind of have a universality to them, that really kind of touch on the elements of beauty, small, almost forgettable senses of beauty that if we don't slow down, we won't see. She was born in 1979 in California, where she still lives. She's based in Los Angeles. She's recently had solo exhibitions at the Tag Museum in Guangdao, China, Rockefeller Center, closer to my home, in New York City, Tim Taylor Gallery in London, and David Kordansky Gallery in Los Angeles. And in just a few weeks, in the first week of September, we'll have a big show at David Kordansky's gallery in New York. Hilary, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I always think it's so interesting to think about kind of, if we think about painting something that's so exuberant, it kind of begins with an artist's inner life. And I think all of our inner lives are informed, whether we want them to be or not, by kind of our childhood and kind of formative experiences growing up. And I always like to talk to artists, do you have a key artwork that you remember that you were first exposed to in childhood that you first recognized, oh, what is that thing? And that you've sort of carried with you and that you remember. Is there any kind of particular artwork from childhood that you first saw and experienced?
Definitely. One of the first artworks that it was a poster from a museum exhibition, was the Matisse goldfish painting, and it hung in my cousin's bedroom, and we would visit my cousins over the holidays, and so I spent many holidays looking at this poster. And I think the thing about that particular painting that really spoke to me was that there was a fastness to the painting, and it was representational, so I knew what I was looking at. But it was not photorealistic or there wasn't this like fussiness to it. And I also like that maybe I don't know that I could have like articulated it at the time, but the perspective was kind of funny. It felt like something that was obtainable to me, like as I already had seen myself as an artist at that point. As a child, I think any child thinks they're an artist. So, but it seemed like something that like I could relate to that.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful, and it still is.
I mean, every child is an artist. I love thinking about it that way. No, but did you come from like an artistic family? Like, did either your parents even like Sunday painters or anything? Or kind of what was the aesthetic vibes growing up?
No, I don't come from an artistic family per se, but I had my dad, my mom, and my stepmom all had like a very hands-on approach to, to keeping up the house, and to they provided us a lot of materials to explore our artistic like curiosities, and they were also just wildly supportive of in everything that we were doing. So I think that they had like an artistic kind of creative approach to life in general that helped all my siblings and I all kind of flourish like in a creative way.
Yeah, I think as a parent that's something that is effective. I hope I'm doing the same thing.
I'm sure.
So outside the home, like did you have a teacher either in elementary or middle school or high school that kind of meant a lot, either in terms of art or anything else that still kind of sticks to you? I think kind of the key people in our lives, kind of outside the home teachers, like did you have anyone that really affected you? I think this is a place, Anderson Ranch, where pedagogy and kind of hands-on passing on of knowledge and mentorship is so key to what happens here. So I'm wondering if kind of in your growing up years, if there was anyone like that for you.
Yeah, there were two people growing up actually. One was my high school teacher who I think I was, kind of like a lot of high schoolers getting in a little bit of trouble and whatnot, and he really could see that, like aside from that, there was like maybe art could help carry me through, and he was very supportive, and we weren't just learning the like foundations and the core. We were really learning a little bit more about contemporary art, and he brought our class to San Francisco, which is the first time I went to an art museum, and.
In high school?
In high school. Mm-hmm. I think I was probably 16. And it was just like mind-blowing. I didn't even know exactly what contemporary art was. And to see, sculptures that weren't made out of like bronze or marble was I thought, like, wow, And then the other teacher actually happens to be here. Linda Geary I was in college with Linda. She was my teacher. And I remember her just like kind of pushing everybody, and at some point she said like you should probably have like a second practice, like do something else, have something in your back pocket so that if something isn't working out you can pivot. And this was my second practice. I was making like paintings. They were much smaller. They're representational paintings, and in grad school. And when I at some point I was really burned out of what I was making. And I thought, well, just keep doing this like side project, and it ended up turning into the practice that I think most people know of mine. So I think you don't always know who or like how something is going to affect somebody, but just those little things really have helped me out a lot.
I mean, I should say you went to the California College of the Arts, CCA, in Northern California, right, Bay Area, and like so you knew coming out of high school that art was something that was your primary focus?
I did. I didn't know how I was going to make a living with it, and I remember having a conversation with my parents and just like them like throwing out all different other ideas. A UPS driver might have been one of them. So it wasn't, but I spent a long time getting to to the finish line of the degree, at least. I spent a lot of time in community college and junior college just doing what a lot of students are doing here, like taking risks, exploring mediums that aren't your own, trying new things. And I think I graduated finally with my bachelor's with like 300 units, which is about 200 more than you need. It was great.
And when did you feel comfortable, either in graduate school, whenever it was, to call yourself an artist, to introduce yourself? What are you? I'm an artist. Not just in your own head, but out to make vocal. Because I think, kind of embodying that is so challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah.
With something that's so amorphous and there's an imposter syndrome. Because do you remember when you began to feel like you could really embody that as an identity?
I've gone back and forth with wearing many hats, since I started a regular artistic practice. And so I don't know if I've ever not called myself an artist, but I've also called myself a lot of other things alongside that. Like a server at a restaurant, a registrar at an art gallery, and, a mother, and all these other hats that we all wear. And so I think of it more of kind of like a portfolio of titles. And right now I'm just so happens that artist is, usually the thing that follows my name.
Top line. Kind of moving into the studio practice. I mean, something that we both were struck by yesterday, going through all the different areas of the campus here and meeting with people and seeing all these great kind of embodiments of a studio practice happening. So I want to talk about the physicality and the materiality of what it means to not just to call yourself an artist, but to be an artist. So I'm sort of wondering, what is your artistic day like? Or what is your favorite time to paint?
I keep a pretty regular schedule, and I usually start the day, I go for a run, I come home, go to the studio, and I'm definitely there before 9. And I don't always feel incredibly inspired in the moment I enter the studio, but I do know that there are things that need to happen. There's plenty of different paintings happening at once. And so when I don't exactly know what to do, I just go to a painting that needs some labor, and I start working on that. And it really gets the kind of just the muscles in your hand and moving, and then when when you're alive, when you've have enough oxygen in your brain, and you can go sometimes hit the more challenging parts of other paintings, then I go and do that. And I think there's this nice kind of dance that happens in the studio where I don't always know how to make a painting. It's going in with a lot of, I have ideas about how something is going to finish up, but a lot of it's just trial and error and painting over things, over and over again, and eventually, hopefully, getting to something that I like. And if not, then so be it. It ends up in the racks.
Yeah. I mean, as we sit here conversing, we have a great selection of some of your works going through, just to give some background as we speak. But I know in chatting with you, the beginning point to your process, or a beginning point, I'm not sure if it's the beginning point, is photography, right? All these works come, and so how do you go about taking and assembling these photographs? What are you looking for in an image? What draws you to things? What's the common threads?
I mean, we're also lucky right now that we have a pretty fantastic camera in our pockets all the time. And I think, you've probably taken 100 photos since you've been here. So, I mean, I sometimes I'll take photos knowing that it's a good opportunity for a painting. I like the composition, I like the colors, the shadows that I'm seeing in real life. And other times I go through my phone photos and I'm like, wow, that, I love the way that looks in a photo. I wonder how that would translate onto, a two-dimensional surface. And so I really just go for it. I look at the picture and I start working on the canvas, and I make big sketches, and then we slowly start to narrow it down to working on the more intricate parts. I don't, I tend to work in a few different typologies. Landscapes, this is up near Mount Whitney from a camping trip with my parents. And I definitely didn't know it was going to become a painting. But I like the mountains are kind of a common theme in a lot of the paintings, especially the landscapes, because they're just and these are LA mountains, they're not Colorado mountains, but I still find them wildly majestic. And the colors and the shadows, the way that the soil, whatever the minerals are, turn pink and purple in the light. And so I take a lot of liberties with those mountains, and I make them real purple and real pink. This is probably from about COVID time, just from my kitchen nook, and at the time my son was eating or he was doing his homework all the time, his schoolwork from the kitchen table. So there was a lot of sitting around and just looking. And sometimes with, something doesn't seem particularly interesting in the moment, but, or it does, but, just that slow looking at something and watching the way that the reflection and the shadows interact with patterns, it ends up becoming something that I feel like I could try and celebrate and replicate in a painting.
So it's interesting. So you never take a photograph where they'd be like, oh, this would be a cool painting?
Oh, I definitely have.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yes.
On a more kind of like materials level, what do you feel like is the most important tool that you use in your studio? Like the paint palette, like what's the...
Yeah. I'm not sure how to answer that. I do work with like specific paint. It's a local paint made in Los Angeles that I really like. There's a flatness to it, and I think it translates the way that I would like it to in the painting. I also love cheap paintbrushes, and but I think the thing that I use the most that I would not be able to paint without it is blue tape. I put little sticky notes all over my paintings with blue tape, and there's a little number on there. There's a few people who have been to my studio, and they'll see these. There's little blue tape marks all over the paintings, like if you were walking through a house with like a checklist for your contractor. And it's like, number 4, and then there's a corresponding pot below of paint. And that's telling me, or I have an assistant that helps also, what to paint where. And that is crucial because I'm not always able to work as fast as I'm thinking about something. So just to make notes, I love blue tape.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also a way of systematically organizing a process.
I'm pretty organized.
Yeah, you're pretty organized, but even the way you systematically organize a visual history using these images and going back through them, I think you are very organized. I think it's important to note that you've always been a painter, but for a while as a day job, you worked as a registrar. And for those who don't know, a registrar is someone who works at a gallery or for a private collection or museum and looks after the care of objects, their movement and transport and record keeping. And it so happens that you worked as a registrar, and I first didn't get to know you, but your name first popped up in my inbox when you were a registrar at the David Kordansky Gallery, where you now show as an artist. And I find something really beautiful about that, about this art world we live in, where these things kind of match up. It's not the usual story, but I think it's a really interesting story about how interrelated all these behind the scenes and the real community of art making and distribution is. What's it like, though, to show as an artist, show your work at a gallery you used to work for?
First of all, you were a very good client or a very good advisor. I remember you very well. And there's some collectors here that I remember as well. I don't know if Holly's in the room, but and it was, and Alex too. It was, so I met some really great people when I was helping, ship sold artworks. And I worked at the Kordansky Gallery because it was my absolute favorite gallery in Los Angeles. I love Dave's vision. I felt like his gallery really embodied what I imagined LA to be. There's fun, there's some playful, there's also there's some academically driven work in there, but it's all having a good conversation amongst each other. And the work complements, all of the artists' work complements each other there. And he's a great dealer, and he was always very good with his artists. So, I took the job there as a registrar. It's the least sexy part of a gallery. It's like the backbone of it. It's I think of it as legalities and logistics. And but it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to be up close and personal with the artwork and follow it. I basically knew people that were collecting work from that gallery. I could see what they had bought there, and so I had an idea of their collections. And I also got the opportunity to meet a lot of collectors, not in a way where I'm the artist and they're the collector, but just got to know them a little bit as people. And it was an opportunity I wouldn't have had if I had just moved to LA from San Francisco, didn't go to grad school or have any community there. And then at some point, I left the gallery because I knew things were working out, and just circumstances came up that an employee at Kordansky asked if I wanted to be in a group show, if I would be interested in being in a group show at the gallery, and I was just like, oh my God, yes. And she said, don't get too excited, but it ended up working out. So it was just like, I remember thinking, you know, even if the show never happens, the fact that I was invited to do this is so exciting. And then when the show happened, and I thought, well, if this is it, this was really good. And so, like, kind of just like staying in the moment and being present and not trying to like think about the future too much or think about all of the hard things I did at Kordiansky, which was difficult. You know, it's just like, just being in the moment has been really wonderful. And knowing that like this moment I feel so lucky to be up here right now, and it's unbelievable that anybody wants to be here. But I also know that this moment can pass, you know, and that's okay because it's been really fun so far.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you know, being a registrar is looking after the object, is the actual art object. And being an
Yes.
artist is really being primarily concerned. There's all sorts of ancillary things, but being primarily concerned with the creation of the object.
Yeah.
And that's going to be there no matter, you know, the audience will vary over time, right? We need to, and whatever we do, be prepared for that and make sure that the thing that we're doing out of passion is still always there no matter what the audience is like. And it's like, it's hard. It's hard, but, you know, if you haven't had a lot of viewership, perhaps, you know, and I think it's certainly hard even if you had, and I think it's an important thing to note. On a more lighter, perhaps, note, what do you guys listen to in the studio? What kind of music are you?
Oh, there's 3 people working for me right now, doing various things in there, but we're all runners. One of them's not really, but she's like in the conversation. So we talk about running a lot, and we talk about artwork a lot. We listen to true crime, and then you know actually we listen to Ollie's Ollie is a friend of ours who lives in Costa Rica, who has
Radio Quibera,
Yes,
fantastic
it is a
music, the
fantastic-
best.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know most of the music that's on there, so it really just feels like insight into somebody else's like curated playlist, and it's really nice. Yeah, he really pushed that one on me though to start listening.
It's really good. Come up to me afterwards. I'll give you the link to
Yeah.
it. It's fantastic.
He'd love that plug.
Yeah, he totally. You know, I was going to leave this for a little bit later, but just because you bring up that you're a runner and those in your studio are, I know like you know, I know that you've run marathons. I know you have a marathon coming up in Seattle on Sunday, which this high altitude training is like perfect to gear up for. You know, kind of, I know they're separate things, like one's exercise and one's like kind of your aesthetic and soulful pursuit, but I think there is a connection. Have you ever thought about what the connection is between being a long distance runner and a painter of images?
Yeah, I mean, I think either, you know, making a painting, just one painting or a body of work is like one small mark at a time, and it's this like building up of images and being able to pivot when you need to, it's like a building up of marks, sorry, and to make an image and like pivoting, and there's just then building up for a show is this. It's like a slow process. You know that in 8 months there's going to be an exhibition, so we have to start making the base and getting things together. With like running a like endurance, it would be really hard for most people to just whip out 26 miles, you know, without a lot of training. So there's just kind of setting up a schedule and like following it and just having that faith that like small moves, small movements are going to add up to something really big. And you know, like at some point I had a quite small studio. My studio's larger now. I can make bigger paintings and stuff, but it's really amazing to be able to I have an empty studio right now because I'm about to I just shipped a show out to David Kordiansky in New York. And all my assistants right now are prepping the surfaces. So I saw an image, they're all on the wall, they're ready to get going. And it is just white canvases in there. And it's really exciting, it can be a little bit daunting also. But just to like slowly build up and get outlines on the wall, get a composition on the canvases, the surfaces. It's like being able to look at a schedule and know that it's all going to come together. Just got to do the work. Got to dig deep sometimes.
Yeah, just like in a marathon.
Yeah.
You know, you spoke about the fact that I know that, or offline we've spoken, you do a lot of running with friends and you'll chit chat during the runs and, you know, other artists, people in the art world, social friends. And I know kind of community not just in running, but in your art practice is really important. You mentioned to me previously that sometimes you'll grab images that friends of yours have taken for the beginning of paintings. It's not always just images you've taken.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit. I know you have a couple of, not studio mates, but people whose studios in Los Angeles are quite proximate to you. And especially being here and seeing the sense of community that's engendered both in Aspen generally and the supporters, but especially here at Anderson Ranch between the different artists and disciplines. Like, what does community mean for you as a person? And then as an artist, like, how do you build and inhabit community in your practice?
Yeah, I don't know that I realized how important it was until the pandemic and everybody was isolated. At that time, right before the pandemic, I had just started training for a half marathon, and I had moved into a new studio. And especially in California, it's probably a little bit stricter than here, but like everybody was on lockdown. Nobody was doing anything. So it was being able to, I was allowed to go to my studio, and in my studio strip, there's one of my best friends, Lily Stockman, who was out here earlier this year, or this summer. And then I also was allowed to be outside exercising. So it was like, I realized that that's fine. I don't actually need a whole lot of other socializing, but to feel healthy mentally and not just be in like my own little vacuum, I really need to have the conversations with other people and kind of like work things out. And being in the studio with having the proximity to other artists is like, it's a gift in many ways, but we can bounce ideas that actually don't have anything to do with art making, but like the business of art, which is very confusing often for artists. So we can have these like pretty great conversations to figure out like, is this normal, whatever is happening, And then also when I, compositionally or whatever, if I'm confused about the way something is looking, we have a lot of those conversations as well. Lily and I in particular, I think we know each other's work more than anybody because we spend so much time with it. And although I'm not in her studio, I eat lunch with her every day. We have a community table out under the tree.
I love that.
And there's like my assistants, Lily, Mindy Shapiro is in there. It's this really nice dialogue that happens. And it feels like to me the community that you lose when you lose school studios or like an environment like this. It's been really important for me to kind of recreate that, and it's really only been in the last 4 years, but it's awesome.
In kind of a more, insular community, one of the things that we've been talking about, like kind of going on walks around here and our little hikes and with some of the staff here, is our kids, because we all have school-age children, and being a parent is such an intense, weird, beautiful thing. Humbling, yeah, I mean, all the words, right? But I think especially for an artist, and more so because the way that gender roles have been set up heretofore, I think for a female artist, like I do think that motherhood has a whole special perspective, I think, to being an artist. So did becoming a mother and being a mother now, you think change how you approach both the actual specific work, but also just your art making practice and how it, like what it feels like within the context of your entire life? Oh
yeah, I mean, I would like to think that being a mother is no different than becoming a father or anything, but just the way that babies are, they tend to need their mothers a lot. When my son was really early or really young, the biggest change was that I just really needed to cut out anything that like any excessive, time traps. I realized I had a child, I had a day job and an art practice that was really, 3 or 4 days a week. And I wasn't going to be able to fit all of these things in. I also like to work out a lot. So I wasn't going to be able to fit everything in if I was like, just doing all the unimportant things, a lot of like unnecessary socializing, blow drying my hair, things like this. So
some here would argue that's very essential, but
yes,
continue.
I know it. It is. It's true. So that was like the first real shift. I also realized that I wasn't happy in my art practice, the one that I had been, working towards for a long, through school and after. And so I just decided, that's when I decided to just work on this secondary practice. And then the other thing is that it has set up my schedule in a way, like it was really important that I know that on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I had studio days when I worked Monday through Thursday. Now, obviously, I don't have a day job. I haven't for 5 years, but it's still, my husband and I have it set up in a way that it is like I never do with anything in the morning with my son. My husband has that. It's just everything is compartmentalized, and I know that I can roll out of bed if I choose to, go to my studio, and just like get into flow and be uninterrupted. When my studio was in my house, I did not want to know that there were dishes in the sink. It was very important that I would not be responsible for any mothering duties when I was in my studio. In the same way that I think my husband takes his art practice seriously. So that happened kind of early on in motherhood, and it's worked out well. And honestly, the older he gets, the more time I have, So.
Yeah. Just because you mentioned like being in flow as you're painting, and while you spoke about the relationship between running and painting as one of hard work and accrual and putting in the small gains for bigger goals, like do you ever reach a similar state of flow in your running and when you're really just in the zone of painting?
Definitely. I mean, I don't run alone a whole lot. I'm usually running with friends, chit-chatting, but I think just being in a conversation, like a really juicy conversation, gossiping, whatever, talking about kids, art, celebrities. Oftentimes it's like, wow, 16 miles just went by, and that was not hard. And when I'm by myself, which I do have to run sometimes by myself, I oftentimes will listen. I listen to the New Yorker audio, and it's just listening to a story. It's really great. And I also feel like you get that. They talk about a runner's high, and I don't know that I feel that exactly when I'm running, but when I'm done, I feel so good. I cannot wait to do it again. And that's like what I feel like with painting too. Like sometimes it is brutal, and I feel like I just worked all day and that I got nowhere. But then at the end of the day, I have that kind of elation that.
What makes a painting of yours successful for you?
Not having. I feel like a painting is successful when I don't know how it's going to end up. Like where there's a little bit of. Like grappling with the making of it, and it's like something perhaps I don't know how to finish, and that doesn't mean that it's not a floral still life. Like that can be just as hard because I don't know how to execute something or render something the way that I'd like to. But sometimes it's also just like fighting with color, and then when you finally break through and get somewhere that you like where it's at, and you realize, wow, that's not what I thought it was going to be, and it is way better. And that happens. I feel like it doesn't happen with every painting, but those are the ones that are like real special to me. And there's a painting in here of DePaulo's for all you New Yorkers. It's like cheese and ham, and that was a brutal painting for me to make. And it was here we go, right here. It was very hard. I didn't know how to do it. It's not a typology that I work with often. And it was in a show I had in New York, and I decided I'm keeping that painting. That painting was hard, and I keep a painting from every show, and I'm going to keep that one. So it wasn't really flying off the shelf anyway. I mean, so ham, cheese. Yeah.
It's interesting to talk about that very New York painting because I think of you so much, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, as a West Coast and an LA artist.
99%.
Because I also think of like Hawkney's West Coast years, and I see a lot of Hawkney in you, and just like even in the some great paintings of kind of not shops, but like signage for shops, as well as those California mountains, and even the interiors have a certain California optimism to them. But I'm wondering how has, especially being in LA, both in terms of its art history influenced you, and also going back to community, like LA has a very specific vibe to it. So what does it mean for you to be an LA artist? I've lived in California for 90% of my life. I lived in New York briefly and in Milan for even briefer time. So I don't know that I know what it's like to not be a Californian. But there's a casualness to California that's not unlike how it seems out here. And it feels very natural. Dinner parties come together effortlessly. There's
I think part of it too is that it's like a younger state. There's not the same, like, I don't know, things just kind of unfold like really easily. I'm not fancy, so everything's just kind of like, it seems like eclectic and I really like in the paintings themselves. I like to celebrate these like moments of like where I've had interactions with friends, where there's an empty dinner table. I like to like also, in like this painting, there's some handicrafts in there. There's this wild tablecloth and a neat ceramic bowl made by my friend Michelle. And I love to be able to like work as almost like a tourist trying other people's like marks and it just I like to try and celebrate all of those things.
Yeah, and I think also, in addition to the aesthetically, I think in terms of the community you spoke about, and just the community that I see exists within LA, much of it's such an atomized city anyway, like everyone's kind of in their cars in their separate worlds. Like the artists in LA in different generations kind of tend to be more cohesive.
Yeah.
Like they hang out and like go to each other's shows. That's not the case in New York.
And dinner parties
And
are
dinner
big.
parties, yeah. Do you like to cook?
No.
Do you, do you like to eat?
I do like to eat. I used to like to cook more. Now I'm just trying to get something like healthy, under 30 minutes on the table that my child will also
Back to
eat.
motherhood, yeah, back to parenthood.
But I do like to eat. I think LA, I used to live in San Francisco, and San Francisco has some of the best restaurants in the world. I like just incredible food there. I used to work in restaurants. I felt like it was my duty to really know what every restaurant in San Francisco was serving, and then the wine culture there is really close to Napa and Sonoma, so there was that too. And when we were moving to LA about almost 12 years ago now, I thought it's going to be really difficult. There's everything's so spread out, and sure there's good food, but it's not just like a stone's throw. And what I think it was really quick to discover was that there's fabulous restaurants like James Beard Awards everywhere, Michelin stars, but there's also a lot of just great there's like just a great taco truck. There's great food in any neighborhood, whatever you're looking for. You just have to be like a little bit more adventurous and and just get out there.
Food becomes somewhat of as I was looking through kind of as much of your work as I could find, a recurring theme. Like you have tabletop still lives, that great deli picture from New York. There's a great little shot of, it's right there again. There's a great painting of some oysters that I know of, and like other. So it's not just, I'm not asking this just casually.
Yeah.
And I think that again speaks back in my reading of the work to the community. This notion, there's very rarely, if ever, people or figures in there.
Very rarely. There's a handful.
Yeah, a handful. But I feel like you get that sense of people just removed, but that feeling of community, of coming together over a shared plate of food and having a shared experience that I think is kind of just outside the frame of a lot of your paintings in a lovely way.
Well, you touched on there's rarely figures, maybe one here or there, but I do oftentimes think of the images, like this is my friend Megan's house, and that is her cat, and she was an English Lit major and went to grad school for also, I think, English Lit and then art school. So in a way, a lot of these are kind of portraits in their own sense of what people decide to put out in their house. Maybe it's aspirational, but it's the things that they chose to describe themselves. And then, so there's that, and then there's also like in these experiences, like, this is at a friend's house. We were really just having like a happy hour. And so I do really value my community and my friends. And so it's a way of like celebrating that.
So speaking kind of community, and that's like such a recurring theme in this conversation, I think it's because I'm here and it feels very resonant in the Anderson Ranch environments. If you were to take one class here or focus on one material outside of painting, what would you come back and explore, do you think? What material?
Material, I don't know.
Or what class? All the little kind of areas too, as we walk through, kind of what?
I think I work very flatly, and although there's this implied space here, there's not a lot of blending that happens of color, of like shading or anything. There's a very flat approach to it, and space is a little bit wonky. I really am very interested in three-dimensional objects, and as a collector, I love collecting tabletop sculpture. I love to touch it and feel the weight of it and feel where other people have like held it or assembled it. And I place a lot of value in sculpture. So I think personally I would love to take a class in sculpture, but particularly like a class that would help a 2D thinker work three-dimensionally. I think of sometimes like these, the Eames cards, you know these? Yeah, the cards that stacked on top of each other in like a kind of like a Noguchi or Aaron Curry way. That's something that makes sense to me because there's still these two-dimensional things that the sum of them equals a three-dimensional thing. I would love to work that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe like those 3D printers that we were checking out yesterday, or the clay 3D
Yes.
printers, which I had never seen before, which were incredible.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to throw a pot on a wheel.
Can
like
I
that's
paint
my.
on your pot?
Oh my God, a collaboration
Okay. Yes,
in the works. I think we've reached the point where it'd be great to begin to open it up, and unless I've missed something that you want to touch on, and hear from our audience who might have some questions about you, your practice, and anything else. I think we have a microphone that's going to go around. I see some hands.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for this talk. I was curious, I know most artist practices, and I know yours has sort of a drift evolution to it, and I was curious what you identify as kind of the living edge of your practice, like that might just be beginning to be conscious of where you're going, either subject or form.
Oh, do you mean like the way that it will continue to evolve?
Yeah, like, is there something that, I know, like, subject-wise, things like that, but I was just wondering if you do identify things that are just coming to be, and you purposefully choose one path over another?
Yeah. I don't always know how things are going to unfold, and I think that it's important for me to kind of roll with things, and by working through one idea, sometimes that opens up something else. And like I mentioned, not really painting figures. I render very poorly figures. They look terrible. But I never want to close myself off to that. And I also really like a challenge. So I think that just being able to be flexible and feel like, I don't have to make anybody happy. I can really just continue to pursue my interests, and that's absolutely okay. It's a little bit tough to say because I know that there's some people in this room that I owe paintings to, galleries, but but I also I feel like as long as I'm being pursuing or asking questions and kind of pursuing interests that are true to me, then that's going to keep me interested and not burn out.
Hello, beautiful work, and you were talking a lot about how the patterns and being interested in representing that. And I've noticed from your work that there's quite a lot of typography, writing, and lettering, and I just was interested to know how you saw the letters in your work, and do you approach it as a pattern, or do you see it as lettering? We went to a lecture at the Bauhaus talking about, their typography, their text, and so I just was interested to think about how you approached it and where your interests lay in it, and, just a little bit about that would be interesting.
Yeah, there's oftentimes text in the painting, and it's like text that's from the image, and one of the reasons I like to use text in the paintings is that it's a really quick source. It's like a symbol that your eye is drawn into, and it just kind of quickly helps you move around the painting. I like in this case, this person's house is a friend of mine, and I went over there, and she's obviously interested in art, and it was also like really, these are like artists that I really like also. So it was like a nod to these historic artists, but ultimately the texts, like even in this, these are like symbols that we all recognize, and even if it's in a language, like in Los Angeles, you see a lot of like Korean and Spanish texts on buildings, and I don't always know what they say, although I've been working on my Spanish, but not Korean. And so but you recognize it as a symbol, and so it's like a very quick way to like just to draw in your eye. And I also love like in a lot of times with like signage, there's already been somebody like a designer that's come through and decided what would be a good way to communicate something. So really, I'm just like acknowledging their efforts in the same way that I would with like patterns.
I have a question kind of off your first question answer. As a successful artist, do you feel pressure to recreate when people, what people expect of you, and how do you allow yourself to grow?
Oh, that's a great question. I work in landscapes, still lifes, interiors, and people will always tell me what their favorite, style of paintings are. I really appreciate that. I love knowing what interests people, and I really want to make paintings that people like. I know that that's not possible, that for everyone's going to like them, but that's my goal, is just to be able to like share this experience and with somebody else anyway. I like never want to make this painting again because it was like a lot of work and it was really hard, and I did it already. So, but it is, there's. The show with David Kordansky, we got a couple cat paintings in there because it was, it was something new. And even with the same image, I think it would be really hard for me to recreate it completely. I don't have that skill level to make an identical painting anyway. Yeah, there's a painting in here with the big purple mountains that I said was up by, it's like Mount Whitney. And that painting started off this large, and I made it several years ago, and I kept it, and I just thought, that it was maybe a study for something in the future. And then this painting was made like 4 or 5 years after that, and it is a completely different painting than the small version. I was working from the same photo though.
I think I saw a hand over on this side.
Thank you so much for sharing your practice so generously. I like the way you talk about your perspective having a wonkiness. That's what I really find very attractive. So do you have to work from one photograph, or are you willing to combine a few photographs to get that wonkiness?
Oh, I wish, it is a natural wonkiness. It just comes out of one photo. I'm not projecting when, like some artists use a projector, which is fine. I usually just make a very quick sketch. And if something really bothers me, I will go in and like try and rectify the composition or, some lines within it. But for the most part, once I've set it and I stand back and I look, I just start to narrow down the area that I'm working in. And so towards the end of the painting, I mean, if at any point, if I decide like this just isn't working, then I just can it, or I throw it in the racks. But for the most part, I tend to like the way things are going, and so I just narrow down on the different areas in it. Yeah.
Any more questions? We must have covered it all, I suppose.
Well, thank you,
I
Benjamin.
did my job correctly then. I want to thank you, Hilary. I especially want to thank also Peter and everyone here at the Anderson Ranch. It makes the place run. Everyone has been so amazing in letting us into their studios and experience the world. And everyone's just so generous with their time and their energy here. And of course, to all the supporters that make this place possible. So I think Hilary and I will join me in saying Thank you all, and we both can't wait to come back and sing back.
Thank you, Benjamin.